Fast X, everything you need to know.
Part 2.
In what order should you watch the Fast Saga? Known for its clever retcons and devil-may-care attitude, the Fast Saga isn't the easiest franchise to sit down and watch without the proper context. Some of the earliest films actually take place later on in the timeline, while others serve as subsequent follow-ups. Still, the very first film, The Fast and the Furious, is where everyone should start, as it introduces the world and the primary characters, namely Vin Diesel's Dom Toretto and Paul Walker's Brian O'Connor. After the original 2001 feature, Brian's adventures continue in the sequel, Too Fast, Too Furious, although Dom does not reunite with his friend until 2009's Fast and Furious, which is technically the fourth film, but serves as a third chronologically. From there, Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6 continue the plot threads established in the fourth film. The third film released in the series, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, takes place immediately after the sixth film leading into Furious 7, which ties every previous installment together. While Furious 7 was notable as Walker's last portrayal of Brian O'Connor before his untimely death, the series continued with the fate of the Furious. Tying in with the main franchise, Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw takes place after the fate of the Furious, but before F9. Fast X will directly follow the events of F9 and begin the end of the Toretto clan's international adventures together.
How will Fast X explain Brian's absence? From the very first Fast and Furious adventure, Paul Walker's Brian O'Connor made his mark on the franchise and quickly solidified himself as a member of the Toretto family. After becoming best friends with Dom and having children with his sister, Mia, that's Jordana Brewster, the Brian character was retired following Furious 7, with both the fate of the Furious and F9 offering explanations for his lack of involvement. Even after Walker's death, the character remains a part of the overarching Fast and Furious story, with the end of F9 teasing his return. It seems like the Fast Saga can only hold out on showing Brian again for so long. Due to his law enforcement background and his dedication to the team, it's unlikely that the character will continue to sit out each and every new conflict that Dom, Letty, Michelle Rodriguez, and the gang find themselves involved in. Furious 7 sent off Brian well in a respectful ending that honored Walker and the character, but with all the constant teases and references, it's becoming increasingly less believable that Brian won't show up again at some point. When speaking with Total Film, Vin Diesel made it clear that the Fast Saga will not end without a proper send-off for Paul Walker's breakout character. "I will give you this without spoiling anything," Diesel said when speaking about the character's future. "I couldn't imagine this saga ending without truly saying goodbye to Brian O'Connor."
Who is Jason Momoa playing? In almost every Fast and Furious movie, we are introduced to a new villain who has some strange hold over our favorite found family. This has ranged from international terrorists to drug lords and assassins, with some of Dom's most hated enemies becoming uneasy allies later on. With Fast X, Jason Momoa has been added to the ever-growing list of adversaries. But like Furious 7 nemesis Deckard Shaw, played by Jason Statham before him, Momoa's Dante Reyes also has a previous connection to Dom and his crew. As revealed in the Fast X trailers, Dante's time in the Fast Saga extends back to Fast 5, when Dom, Brian, and the crew took down drug lord Hernan Reyes, played by Joaquim de Almeida. While Momoa obviously didn't show up in Fast 5, clever retconning and repurposed footage, not unlike Han's death in the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, have included him in the narrative. Though it was technically Luke Hobbs, played by Dwayne Johnson, who executed Reyes, the makeshift Toretto family was ultimately responsible for the drug lord's defeat. Hoping to enact his revenge against his father's killers, Momoa's character is rooted within the franchise's mythology and aims to be the perfect antithesis of Dom. As director Louis Leterrier described him to Esquire, he is also the polar opposite of Dom. He has all color and flamboyance. It is the yin and yang, the Christ and the Antichrist, the anti-Dom. Sounds like Momoa is the perfect villain for Fast X.
How does Fast X connect to previous Fast and Furious movies? As the most recent installment of the Fast Saga, there's no doubt that Fast X will take everything that the series has done and make it into something new. From the very first film, the Fast and Furious franchise has followed Dominic Toretto and his makeshift family as they tackle everything from street racing and robbing banks to international espionage. Naturally, Fast X won't be any different, though this installment also ties directly into Fast 5. In response to Dom, Brian, and the crew's actions in the fifth film, it seems like Momoa's Dante Reyes will retaliate, though that won't be the only plotline that Fast X explores. Seemingly taking place a few years after F9, the newest feature will pay off the mid-credits reunion between Han and his killer, Deckard Shaw. Shaw had seemingly killed Han during the events of the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, but after the revelation that Han's death was faked, a fight between them seems likely. There's also Charlize Theron's Cypher, the antagonist of the Fate of the Furious and F9, the Fast Saga, who revealed herself to be behind the events of the 6th and 7th films. An international cyber terrorist, Cypher is one of the group's most formidable foes and the one who has arguably taken the most from Dom's crew. All of the Fast and Furious movies, Fast X is gearing up to be the most expansive yet.
Did Mr. Nobody survive F9? One of the strangest additions to the later years of the Fast Saga was the government spy master Mr. Nobody. Played to perfection by Kurt Russell, Mr. Nobody first appeared in Furious 7, at the tail end of Brian O'Connor's tenure in the series. With the advent of this secret super spy, Dom and his family were ushered into a terrifying new world of international espionage with potentially disastrous consequences. Appearing in the last 3 installments, Russell's character isn't slated to appear in Fast X, leaving his fate ambiguous. At the beginning of F9, the Fast Saga, Mr. Nobody is credited with capturing Cypher and transporting her by plane back to the US. Unsurprisingly, this transport does not go as planned, and Mr. Nobody's plane goes down, leaving Cypher to join Jacob Toretto, played by John Cena, on his revenge mission against Dom. In all the chaos, the fate of Mr. Nobody is never officially addressed. Though Han eventually explains how the agent helped him fake his death, his current whereabouts remain unclear. Although Russell is not returning for Fast X, at least as far as we know, Mr. Nobody's daughter, Tess, is set to appear. Played by Brie Larson, the trailer suggests that Tess will aid Dom and his team in their mission against Dante Reyes, acting in a similar capacity as her father did when engaging with the team.
Will Dwayne Johnson return for Fast X? Ever since Fast 5, Dwayne Johnson has been an iconic part of the Fast and Furious franchise, though his involvement is not without some controversy. Though series star Vin Diesel had initially fought for Johnson's casting as government bounty hunter Luke Hobbs in the 5th film, the two clashed on set. Johnson reprised his role in Fast and Furious 6 and Furious 7, but took a break during the 8th installment, instead developing his own spin-off with Jason Statham in Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw. Johnson also skipped F9, the Fast Saga, though his spin-off co-star reprised his role as Shaw for an uncredited after-credits sequence. While Statham is set to return as Shaw once more for Fast X, Hobbs will not be joining him. Since Johnson's character was so important to Fast 5, he executed Hernan Reyes. After all, it will be interesting to see how Fast X deals with Hobbs' absence and if Dante Reyes will even attempt to assassinate Hobbs as well. While Dwayne Johnson has repeatedly distanced himself from the Fast Saga, fans still hope to see Luke Hobbs once more before the franchise closes out. With no concrete news on a potential Hobbs and Shaw sequel and Johnson's disinterest in returning to the main series, it's probably a safe bet to assume that Hobbs' story will come to a close off-screen. It's not ideal, but that's show business.
Will we see Gisele return? Fast and Furious fans are also eager to see Gal Gadot's Gisele return. First appearing in the 4th installment, Fast and Furious, Gisele joined Dom's crew as a weapons expert and a specialist. As a former CIA agent, she was an enormous asset to the team in both Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6. Sadly, Gisele met her end, saving her boyfriend Han near the tail end of the 6th movie, and most of us still aren't over it. Aside from some passing mentions and a deleted scene from Furious 7, Gadot has been too busy playing Wonder Woman in the DCEU, among other projects, to return full-time to the franchise. After Han's death in Tokyo Drift and subsequent return in F9, which followed Letty's death and resurrection in few films prior, it is as possible as ever that Gisele's demise could have been faked also, especially given her ties to Mr. Nobody. While there hasn't been any official confirmation regarding Gisele's return to the Fast Saga, the Direct reported that Gal Gadot had filmed scenes for Fast X. In response to questions regarding Gisele's possible resurrection, Han actor Song Kang told Digital Spy that there was no reason the two couldn't be reunited by the franchise's end. Why can't she? Who doesn't want a load of Gal Gadot in their life? At this point, only time will tell if Gisele's death was permanent.
Fast X is the most expensive Fast and Furious movie ever. Now it seems that with almost every new venture into the Fast Saga, the movie gets bigger and increasingly more expensive. Following the success of the 5th and 6th films, Furious 7 was given a larger budget that, after the death of Paul Walker, quickly grew to $250 million for digital recreations and reshoots. The following film, The Fate of the Furious, was granted a similar budget, while the next two franchise installments, Hobbs & Shaw and F9, cost $200 million each. Nevertheless, it's a far cry from the original film's budget of just $38 million. As the first part of a greater franchise finale, The Wrap reported that the new film's budget is pushing $340 million, making it one of the most expensive films ever made. In comparison, Avengers Endgame had a budget of $356 million, and James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water boasted a budget that was somewhere around $350 million. Though Fast X is less expensive than those two, it's still more costly than popular blockbusters. Like Avengers: Infinity War or Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Exact numbers aside, the point is that Fast X will be huge, and while a big budget does not necessarily equal a hit, we can hope the extra cash will be used wisely to bring the story to life.
Fast X will be a lot more grounded. If one thing is obvious about The Fast and the Furious and its many sequels, is that every new addition gets just a bit bigger and even harder to believe. A film that was originally about illegal racing and once cop infiltration of a street gang quickly shifted genres and became something bigger than anyone had previously thought possible. In the sequel, Brian goes undercover to take down a drug kingpin. In The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, everything changed, focusing instead on American citizen Sean Boswell, played by Lucas Black in Tokyo, as he falls into street racing. From the 4th film on, the franchise found its voice as an adrenaline-fueled, car-centric heist series, which was true until the 7th installment. Since then, the franchise has turned into a globe-trotting action series with ties to the spy genre, with each film becoming increasingly unrealistic as the series pressed onward. However, that is not what Fast X director Louis Leterrier hopes to do with the 10th installment. What I wanted to do in this one, because it's very much my style, was to ground it more in reality, Leterrier told Esquire when discussing his vision for the film. I wanted it to feel like Fast 1, Fast 3, and Fast 5, movies that feel grounded. This is great news for fans of the earlier Fast and Furious pictures and may give the franchise a bit more street cred leading into its final chapter.